You're listening to the Spirit Podcast.
Welcome back, dear listeners, to another episode of To the Spirit. I'm your host, Beck, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, the wonderfully insightful Rachel. Hey, Rachel, are you ready for this one?
I am very excited and ready because we were told to invite Robyn to our table.
That's right, we were.
Who's Robbie? There might be a Robbie that she's bringing in or saying hi to. You know, Robbie says hi to Robbie. I think Robbie's a girl, so we're talking Robyn or something like that. Okay, thank you. Welcome her to your... Okay, thank you. Welcome her to your table. There might be something like that coming. Welcome her to your table.
This Robbie.
Robbie.
Is she crossover on the other side?
I think she's still here.
She
says, welcome her to your table. So it could be somebody that you'll come across here, like a Roberta or Robyn. Or,
Okay.
Okay? So, yeah, I would welcome her. It looks like Mom's bringing good energy to that woman.
Today, we are pulling back the curtain on someone whose very existence seems like it was pulled from the pages of a supernatural thriller. Our guest today is a woman of mystery, power, and extraordinary vision. She has advised world leaders, royalty, Hollywood elites, and top business moguls, all behind the scenes, operating in the shadows like a modern-day oracle. They call her Amazing Robyn, and for good reason. She's not just a seer. She's a foresight consultant, a survival expert, a healer, a sniper, yes, a sniper, and an expert in quantum physics and energetic medicine. If there were ever someone you'd want by your side in a crisis, it's Robyn. Robyn, welcome to the Spirit. We are beyond excited to have you here.
Thank you. That was a great intro. I appreciate that so much. You know, what's funny is when people talk about like if things ever went catastrophic or like they use the word shit hit the fan, they're always saying, oh, we'll be right at your house. And I'm like, no, I'll be long gone before you guys even know what's about to happen.
Your journey started in gospel teaching, but now you're advising the world's elite behind closed doors. That's quite the leap. Was there a moment in your life where everything changed, where you knew you had a gift unlike anyone else?
Yes, I've had a few, but I think where it really pivoted my gifts, my listening, my career, it was right before that earthquake in Japan, the big one that created the tsunami. So I was praying and I had one of my very first audible experiences. I was having a very personal discussion with God, and then he told me that something was going to happen in the region, and it was going to affect one of my business partners. And long story short, I knew that something catastrophic was going to happen in the region that was going to affect my business partner. So I positioned them 3 days prior to the earthquake, enough to where it got noticed publicly. And so CNN had interviewed my partners, which were some of the big boys in the industry that were building very large survival communities, bunkers for the governments around the world. So they interviewed them and said, well, how did you guys know? And they name dropped me on CNN. Back then, you know, a lot of people really just didn't talk about anything woo-woo or supernatural. I mean, even quantum physics or frequencies, those words weren't even used.
Right.
And so when they name dropped me, I wasn't really prepared for that kind of interest by the world. But it was also very apparent because so many people were interested in how I knew and the questions that came to me. That's when I really thought, wow, you know, maybe there is something to this. Because I'm a skeptic too. Everybody needs to know I'm a skeptic. And this is actually why when somebody gets on a phone with me or a client books a call, they're not allowed to tell me nothing. Right. Only their name and that I have permission. I don't care how high profile they are. The reason I'm doing that is A, so I don't have biased information. B, because I'm a skeptic. I want to test myself every single day.
Yeah. I think that's a healthy way to look at things. Being a skeptic in general, I think a lot of us don't use logic nowadays.
Well, especially in my industry, right? Like the woo-woo mystic arena,
Right.
which I hate being compared to a lot of people like that because I'm just so different, especially in my attitude. But I think that people get very comfortable. They just trust whatever random thought they're getting. For me, I'm a brat. I'm always testing God. Even if God himself comes down and tells me something, I'm like, you better give me 3 confirmations.
You're not worried about him taking you to the woodshed? That's kind of funny.
No, and he knows that I'm that way. And my biggest revelations are when I'm having it out with God and I'm being very bold. Like, I'll give you an example. Here's my personality type. A lot of people are familiar with the story of Abraham in the Bible.
Yes.
You guys familiar with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so Abraham, here he is supposedly a prophet. And then he gets commanded by God to sacrifice his son to show his obedience. I've talked to God a lot about this, which I could give you my own version of the story. But if God came down and said some shit like that to me, I would have told him to go F himself. I would have been like, if that's the kind of God you are, I want no part of it. If that's the kind of God you are, that you have that much of an ego that you need me to show my obedience to you, that's like some guru. That's like some human cult leader, right?
Yeah,
And if you've reached godhood, if you've reached exaltation and you still have that need, then you're not the God that I would worship or believe in or be mentored by. And that's just my attitude. And I think that there's a fine line between mental illness and spiritual gifts, to be honest.
We've had that discussion before.
Robyn,
Yeah.
you have a different perspective and you do like to be separated from people in the woo-woo community. When you do your work, do you feel as if you have to spiritually protect yourself? And have you ever had to deal with any form of attachments, or do you believe in that?
I am so glad you brought this up. So this is something I teach my students about a lot. What I'm going to say is when I started out, especially when I was a gospel teacher, I would run into people with entities. Let's just call them different entities, whether they were, I call them unclean or dark or whatever the world's lingo might be for them. Now, my early years of doing this type of work, yes, I would encounter them. I would have to cast them out. I would clean them and cast them out. But now I've had so many spiritual experiences of supernatural things of knowing who I am before this world. And once you have that understanding and that power, which anybody can, I teach people how to know those things in 3 days. It's not a big deal. There's nothing special about me, but finding out about what your authority is, who you are, why we're here, who you were before this world, and where you're going gives you so much information that when you look at entities, darkness, evil, it's like a fly trying to hurt a lion. It's like a 2-year-old throwing a tantrum in a grocery store. They're annoying, but they're not going to do nothing to me. Not only that, but through the years, through experience, I have set terms to my energetic field, meaning my energetic field goes about 100 miles in every direction above and below. So for instance, if I'm in an airport, I've already set terms to my energetic field. If there's any darkness or evil or anything that's creating manipulation, confusion, opposition that doesn't want to be healed or corrected, it cannot be in my energetic field. So if I'm at an airport and these people that are getting on the plane with me have those entities, they have to wait at the next airport. They cannot be on the plane with me.
You have dominion over them.
Yes, but the truth is we all do. I just have learned where my power is. I've learned how to command, and anybody can do that. I've learned how to set terms to my relationship with God, how I receive revelation, how I have to have confirmation. I've set terms to my energetic field on all spiritual realms. And anybody can do that. I teach people how to do that every day.
I think many people, they walk in fear, and I think that is where they get trapped in that fear. So they don't understand the power that you hold within yourself, that you're a warrior.
But even the statement of being a warrior is a default system in the brain that there's a war to be fought, which then puts me in resistance, which then always puts me on guard.
Never thought about that when I'd say to myself, you're a warrior of the light. You're a warrior of God.
So again, think about that statement alone. I'm a warrior for God. As if God is some human guru up in the heavens, living the high life, and us down here, these obedient slaves, need to wage his war. What kind of God do we really believe in when we think of things like that? That this is some big battle of evil and good, but yet he's not doing anything. He's not intervening. What does that mean? So, like, people really need to logically think about these things. And what if none of that is actually true? The truth is that the darkness and the evil is not as dark and evil as you think.
I think we're just so
And that
programmed.
yes, and a lot of it comes from religious baggage and it comes from Hollywood.
Yeah.
And this is why we live in fear. This is like saying, why can't my mentally challenged brother get his shit together and be an A student when he only has the capacity of maybe a 6-year-old? They can go smash a beautiful butterfly. Why did you just do that? And they're like, oh, I wanted to see what he looked like. I wanted to see what his blood looked like. Or they could say all kinds of random things. It's not that they're dark and evil. It's the matter of perspective.
It is a matter of perspective. Do you think being a seer was something you were born with, or do you think that just developed?
I do think that it is something I was born with. It was something that I was called to way before this world. And it was something who I already was, just like everybody else. For instance, I develop people's spiritual gifts every day. And what I find is that people who have a secret desire of a spiritual gift, like, oh, I wish I was a medium, and they watch medium shows and they're so intrigued by it, it's probably because they're a medium.
Interesting.
And those spiritual gifts are handed down through lineages, not just always of this world, but also before this world. It's the tribes that we come from before we even got here. And some of us, especially in this dispensation of time, tend to be the forerunners where we are kind of the leaders of those tribes. You'll find it a lot more in this dispensation of time.
That makes sense for the times we are in.
Mm-hmm.
You just stated that the abilities tend to run in lineage, whether that be ancestral or here on Earth. Did you notice that within your own family?
You know, I didn't. It wasn't until after my dad was killed. And my dad kind of came off like as a conspiracy theorist and, you know, was sometimes a little off. And when he died, I started to realize that some of my spiritual gifts came from him. I just have a different way of thinking about my gifts and the way that I pursue them versus, say, he did. My mom was more of a Christian. My grandmother was a Christian where she would command things in the name of Jesus. I wasn't really raised around her. I only met her once or twice in my whole life. So I had the Christian aspect, and then I had kind of the conspiracy herbology from my dad. So I'm grateful, but you know, I emancipated my parents when I was 15 and kind of grew up on the streets and had to figure out some things pretty quickly. But I started studying religion when I was about 15 across the country, going to different churches, interviewing, asking some really hard questions of God and religion and all kinds of things. But the background of all of that kind of led me into the pathways. I was always a seeker, and that's the only thing that sets me apart from anybody else. Is I'm a brat and I'm a seeker.
There's a certain mystique around you. People, they know of you, but they don't really know you. Is there a reason you prefer to work behind the scenes rather than stepping into the public eye?
Well, you know, currently, I think that the world's a lot more open to it than it used to be. So now it doesn't bother me so much. But when all of that publicity, you know, like CNN, Discovery Channel, National Geographic, everything just kept hitting me, I was getting a lot of hate mail. But you know what's also interesting about that is my own friends and family also never knew me. They never asked me, why are you on CNN or why are you on Discovery Channel? It's just a very odd thing. You know, most of my family, which I don't really have a whole lot of family, both my parents have died, but my friends and family that I grew up with, let's just say, still to this day have no idea what I do for work.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, I just don't really talk about it. And quite frankly, I have 5 children too. My 2 youngest children, my 2 boys, they didn't really start to learn about what I did for work until this year. The reason why is because I'm a skeptic, but I'm humble. And I also don't want to infringe or be in a position of authority and power to my friends and family because I miss opportunities that way. So clients, if I'm around clients, they are constantly probing me. Like, oh, Robyn, what do you think about this? Or should I do this? Or, and my friends and family have no idea what I do. So I get to just kind of be normal with them. But I also think that there's an element of a lot of people don't care. They don't want to get to know people, unfortunately.
The
It is
world's
sad.
shifted so much.
We're very distracted.
Robyn, do you find it difficult, maybe sometimes almost painful, to be around others who are not awake or in tune with their own abilities?
No, but I can see how a lot of other people would feel that way. And what I have come to understand is that a spiritual awakening, a spiritual journey is a lonely journey, unfortunately. We can pick our tribe when it comes to friends, but when it comes to the family that we grew up in and the ones that we're closest to most of our lives, it's kind of like this is what we have. And when you're on a spiritual journey or you're having epiphanies, whether that's personal development, business development, it's growth, right? That's being ambitious. And the people that are around us typically are not. And that's difficult. And it's just like actually with Rebecca, what I was saying in your reading with your mom, it causes a little bit of frustration and resentment towards the ones that we care about the most. Because you're like, oh, why don't you see this? And we want them to see so badly that we end up becoming frustrated. We end up becoming kind of jerks to them in some way. We can critique, we can try to get them to see truth. Look at the whole COVID thing. You could have 50% of the population talking about how vaccinations and masks are the way to go. They can give you 20 facts of why they are correct. And then you have the other 50% that don't believe in vaccinations, don't believe in masks, and they can give you 20 facts of why they're correct. But the truth is they're both correct. So my point is that somehow in this world, we've taught each other that if I'm right, you have to be wrong. And that's just not true. So people who are unwoke or not in tune to their spiritual gifts, they are on the right path. And for me to look at them and say, hey, I'm right and you're wrong, you need to come where I am and start thinking the way I am and get more in tune like I am, that's that whole thing of I'm right, you're wrong. And I'm getting frustrated with what my brother or sister of a human race is deciding.
We call them NPCs. They're non-playable characters. They're people that don't seem to be in tune with the earth. They don't seem to be in tune with their health, their bodies. And we must come at it from a right and wrong perspective, even though we try to be kind and accepting and loving. But it is frustrating because seeing things differently than another, like you said, each side has a truth and they're both correct. But it's a hard pill to swallow.
It's a really good answer, though. Very insightful.
And it's probably just people that you can't spend a whole lot of time with, you know, where you just love them where they're at and love them for their ignorance, love them for their darkness, love them for their resistance. And oftentimes, I'll tell you, people who are that way, if they were to awaken and truly be in tune with their minds, their subconscious minds, the spiritual side of things, conspiracies, you name it, all of it. Because typically when we start to awaken, we awaken in all the categories, right? Sexually, financially, everything. If they did, they might not have the capacity to want to be here. They're already struggling just to live, just to breathe.
There's got to be a purpose for this.
If you ever notice that, they're miserable.
But doesn't that seem... If you go biblical or if you go new age and you say, oh, well, there's going to be an ascension and the earth is going to split and it's going to take these people to this area and the people that don't follow Christ are the people that are stuck in their ways or are very about their earthly goods. They're going to stay over here. I get confused as to what's the point. Either way, if you look at it, it's like, well, why? Why isn't everyone going to the same place? Why isn't everyone ascending at the same time? Why aren't their eyes open? What's going on?
Because they can't handle it. Right now, those people tend to be pretty miserable. They like the most basic information, which a lot of that basic information, they are provided for by the government. They're being taken care of. They have Social Security coming. They work a W-2 job. They kind of do the very basics of things, right? And they're
Right.
still very miserable. If they were to awaken to the truth and power of themselves and what was available to them, they would have to take self-responsibility for that, which could absolutely push them over the edge.
Similar to when they say, if everyone knew there were aliens, it would be chaos, specifically religious people. They'd have meltdowns. They wouldn't be able to handle it, take their own lives. It'd be like War
Right,
of the
but it's
Worlds.
like, what's your definition of an alien? Anything that's not from this world, right?
Yeah.
But heaven, as a Christian, is not of this world. We reference heaven being home, or when someone passes that they're returning home. They
Yeah.
think everybody's up in the clouds. I mean, do they even think about this logically?
Right.
God talks about the world that he lives on.
I've always said that to people that kind of combat me because I see things in a different perspective, obviously, than most. That's why I do this show. And I say, don't you think that God and Jesus is supernatural? I don't understand why you're saying that we have to shut that down when they are the most supernatural things going.
But they get to be the only ones.
You have been called a secret weapon for individuals and corporations. When someone comes to you for guidance, what is that process like? Do you use codes, frequencies, visions? I know quantum physics, it's very confusing for me, but I know Rachel is very into this.
Well, I'll give you some specifics. I never name drop my clients, just so you know, but I can talk about products and companies. And sometimes people figure it out, but I'll give you a specific company. There was the super healthy green drink that's on the market that everybody knows of, and natural grocers, Whole Foods, everything. And then one day their sales plummeted. So they did all the normal things. They remarketed, rebranded, even did some couponing, paid for it to be eye level on the shelves in the grocery stores. Nothing was working. And a lot of people do this. They do everything like, on paper, which makes sense. Just like with Apple, they kept hiring all the CEOs to take over for Steve Jobs. On paper, they had the most amazing resumes, but energetically, they never looked at it. So this green drink gets introduced to me. They set up a call. I get on a call. Again, I don't want to know anything of who they are. All they're allowed to tell me is the name of the company, and then I have permission to tap in. So I tap in, and within 3 seconds, I said, hey, about 2 years ago, did you guys change your manufacturing facility? And they said, yeah, but that's not why we're calling. I said, that's okay. I just want to make sure I'm on track. And so once I get that one cue that that's correct, then I know that I'm on the pathway, right? So I tap in even further. And I said, well, did your sales plummet about 2 years ago when you changed your manufacturing facility? And they said, yeah, that's about the same time, but they have nothing to do with that. They're performing perfectly. And I said, okay, well, let me tell you what's going on. The facility that you hired, the owner of that facility is committing fraud and doing a bunch of shady deals after or off the books. Yes, they're performing very well, but because you have a green drink that's alive, it's susceptible to energies. So you have this super healthy organic green drink, and the last people who are touching it and the last people who are around it for more than 24 hours is committing fraud. And he was hiring employees that were just as shady as him, that were okay with doing shady dealings. So now you have a whole facility of people that are kind of shady doing unclean things. It's just a lower vibration. Just think of it that way. And so I said, it's feeding into your green drink. I said, I bet you when you surveyed your customers, they had no idea why they weren't buying your product anymore. And they said, exactly. And I said, it's because it felt differently. I shifted the energy of the facility. So energetically with quantum codes, I loaded codes into the live minerals of the green drink to protect it from being manipulated by lower frequencies. I created a business plan for them to be able to use and funnel all the new proceeds so that they could buy a new manufacturing facility and create it and be able to distribute themselves, right? So this would never happen again. But that's just one thing that a lot of companies just don't think of. They don't look at the energetic frequency their products and services aren't doing. Another thing with quantum codes is I can program anything that's alive. So a vodka company came to me and said, "Hey, we want a vodka that will never make somebody hungover." And I'm like, "Well, I could do even better than that. So let's load it with minerals. I'll program it with quantum codes so that when people drink it, they create more joy and more laughter, and that it'll protect them from low vibrations like anger and rage. It'll bless their kidneys, their liver, and they won't get hungover."
I don't
Go ahead.
drink, but I would drink that.
Yeah, and I didn't drink. I didn't drink at the time. So I was actually kind of conflicted about it, to be honest. I had to really pray and ponder about it. And so that's why I decided to go that extra level, that extra step to create a frequency that would create more of a benefit spiritually versus somebody just drinking, because people tend to go in a lower vibration when they're drinking if they're prone to that. So I wanted to protect them from that. So that's just like one way, but you could do this in the most simplest thing. There's so many simple ways of using quantum energy or quantum entanglement, string theory, to do the most basic things.
So you believe the universe operates on a structured code.
Yes.
The average person, how can they tap into that code to unlock their potential?
Again, they need to know who they are, their power and their authority first. So I'll give you an example. If people are believing that God or Christ is way above them, perfect, and they're a natural enemy to God, and that they're like nothing compared to God, then they will really very much struggle with this. Okay. But if you can learn that, which if you don't know that, I can teach you to find out, then what you can do is something so simple. Like, for instance, I could write a statement out in my journal and say, every time I use my brush, every time I brush my hair grows 10 times faster. It grows thicker, shinier, healthier. It's full of body and volume. And then I attach a code like 12567 and say, this code is now attached to the statement. That's string theory. I could then put that code on my brush because that whole statement would never fit on there. But I could put that code on my brush. And every time I see that code, it has an energetic feel to it, especially if it's a wooden brush, because wood is real, not a synthetic brush. Can't do it with synthetic things. So then every time I use my brush, it has an energetic feel to it because of the string theory attached to it. And subconsciously, I see that code and I'm going to think about it. I'm creating an amplification of the code just by thinking about it. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. So you're just creating that code yourself. There's not a code book for that.
So I create quantum codes, but I do it in a mathematical form. So I'm giving you the most basic layman's way that anybody could do. Yes. There are a lot of different ways of doing that. So I generate codes. They're in sequences. So I have to test them over and over again. I test them in 5 different ways and I make them to where they're also trademarked. So if anybody else used my code, it wouldn't work for them. So I do it a lot more in detail. For instance, I have a spiritual awakening retreat where I'll be teaching people protocols on how to awaken or how to develop their gifts or how to get truth, how to know who they were before this world, things like that. And one of the things that I provide is I provide quantum codes to program their water during the immersion. And what that does is it naturally increases DMT in the brain. It opens up their pineal gland. It helps them to get revelation, visions, prophecy, all of that stuff. And those codes have been tested and refined many times. And I've had to do a lot of testing on that with test groups and things like that to make sure that they're valid and real. And I did like placebo studies on that. So there's basics ways and then there's more profound ways. But if somebody took my codes for spiritual awakening or DMT that were not an Amazing Robyn client or student, they would not work
They're locked
because I
up.
programmed them in the sequence.
Hey, Spirit Seekers, enjoying the show? Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the Spirit. Leave us a review on Apple or Spotify and share the love. We drop a new video every week on our YouTube channel covering paranormal, conspiracy, high strangeness, and more. Have questions or want to share your own spooky story? Drop us a line at tothespiritpod@gmail.com. Stay spirited.
Rachel, she'll pray or say something over her water before she drinks it so that
Absolutely.
it heals her. I wonder what's the difference between that and having the quantum coding. Is there that much of a difference?
So the quantum coding, think of it as more of a continuance dosing and specifics. I think that a lot of times with prayer, people are not being specific and it's a one-time thing. And they can also forget to do it every time, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So, for instance, if Rachel prayed over her water and had very great detail and specifics, which we'll talk about in a second, and then she said, I asked for this to renew every 10 seconds to constantly dose this water, that would be very different. But she also would have to have a high level of belief because her belief in that comes from the power of the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is what's setting the term in the energetic field. For instance, I do have belief. So me programming it and renewing it every 10 minutes in the quantum field, I know it's doing that. I know that I've set terms to that. She might not know that. And if she doesn't know that, it would weaken the projection or the frequency.
I know you've talked about how faith and belief play a role in healing. Have you ever worked with somebody whose lack of faith created a roadblock to their own healing? And can healing happen regardless of belief, or do you think faith can amplify the process?
Very, very good questions. I work with a ton of people that are skeptics and atheists, and I love that. So, do I think that belief systems can amplify things? Absolutely. But when you can show magic or show something supernatural to an atheist, they go into a more logical trust versus a believer is almost convincing themselves because they're like, oh, I got to keep up the faith. And then they almost are trying to testify to themselves because somewhere they have a religious baggage that if they don't have faith or believe that it's somehow offensive to God, they're going to block their own blessing. So there is some baggage in that. But an atheist and non-believer, if they can have a supernatural experience, they are more curious. They're almost like, show me, which invites. When you're curious and you're like, show me, that's inviting a spirit in. It's inviting the heavens to shake for your good. It's like, oh, we got their attention now. Let's show them. Because the right spirit waits for an invitation. The wrong spirit doesn't. The wrong spirit will manipulate and be loud and almost force you.
What are your thoughts on Reiki?
I think everybody has it. I don't believe that people should be taking classes to be activated or doing any initiations with anything.
I think I was just always intrigued by Reiki, the attunement process. I always kind of wondered about that because They talked about how Jesus performed Reiki and he said, what I can do, you can do too. So I always felt like, is Reiki just a part of us? But then once we are in tune and we know we can do it, we can do it. Does the attunement have to happen?
No, and I think that that's part of the initiation. It's the monetizing of Reiki.
Yeah, it's almost cult-like in a weird way.
Yeah, I never went into the third degree where you can attune people. I just went into the second degree.
I think that there are some people that are very logical and analytical and they want step by step. But I do think, and I understand why they would go that route. And some people really trip on certifications and titles. One of the things that God was very clear to me about in my healing journey as becoming a healer, stepping into my power, I remember having the same thoughts like, oh, I need to, learn how to do this and this and this. And he straight up told me no, not to. And I was like, why? And he said, because I want you to do it your way. And I've found a lot of power in that. And even the way that I teach my students and my clients is I tap into their gifts and God shows me how for them to use it. So I'll plant a seed and I'll help them to develop it in their way, not my way.
That's the best way.
It is. And we need those unique individuals doing it their way. So if anybody did do attunements or is doing Reiki classes, I would just say you really need to trust your instinct.
Yeah.
And the way that you trust your instinct is you think about the most worst case scenario. Like if my child was just hit by a car or my dog, what would I do? If it was just me and them and there was no help coming, what would I do? Naturally, instinctively in my mind, what would I do? And that's where your gifts can really come in.
Now, intuition seems to play a pivotal role in your work. How do you define intuition and what practices do you recommend for individuals looking to strengthen their intuitive abilities?
I think intuition is equally important of not listening as it is listening. And people get on themselves about this all the time, but when we don't listen and we have a gut feeling, or we always have this thought, and if the thought comes several times, like when I used to do firearm training and survival training for people for catastrophic events, it usually came from a family or an organization that had some kind of spiritual prompting and they didn't realize it. Meaning, a woman said, I knew that I was supposed to get gun training and self defense training because I was worried about being robbed. And I ignored it and then I got robbed. So the not listening is equally important as the listening because now she's listening. There's not a right or a wrong. The reality is you will get it when you get it. You will learn it and learn it when you are ready. You will step into it when you're ready to step into it. And you're like, okay, I know I have this and I want to develop it more. Then it's really about the specifics and setting terms to the spiritual realm, like with me and God, and how I've set terms with, I have to have 3 confirmations and what those confirmations look like. You need to be very detailed and very specific. And intuition is about having confirmations, just like the scriptures talked about having 3 witnesses. Christ was performing miracles, but there needed to be witnesses so that other people could testify. A variety of different personalities needed to testify. And we need that. Blind faith is a man-made thing. And it creates blind obedience, which I think is a very dangerous game. Confirmation is where it's at. Because even if God himself comes to me and I don't have multiple confirmations that happened or that's real, that I wasn't deceived, I will doubt myself in a month from now. Unless I've had multiple confirmations.
With your intuition and your abilities, I know that you get communications through dreams. Is someone like me who I lucid dream and I astral travel to different places in dreams, what other things can we achieve while in the dreaming realm?
Kind of a case by case thing, but I learn a lot through dreams. And I think, again, it's one of those things that you need to inquire. So remember how I said the right spirit always waits for the invitation? The supernatural realm that is of truth and light will not overwhelm you with information. They will not force information. They will not manipulate you in truth and light. And you feel like there's something different about it. You don't know what the hell it means, any of that. That's okay. But you just know that there was something to it. That means you need to inquire. Even if you don't know if God or supernatural things are real, just go have a verbal conversation with them and just say, hey, I don't know if you're real. I don't even know if anything's listening. I don't even know who I'm talking to. But if you believe in God, then address God and just say, hey, I had this dream. I don't know what it means, but I know it was something. But I want to know more. Give me specifics and very much inquire of it. Once you start to develop that, then you can go really, really far in your dreams. So then you can start asking things like, show me what kind of world I came from. Who was I before this world? What can I do that's getting in my way? Or show me what's getting in the way. How can I become more powerful? Show me how I used to heal things. Show me my spiritual gifts. The sky's the limit, what you could be doing in your dreams. You can be taught so much because your brain and your subconscious brain is not on guard. So whatever you want to learn, I mean, people learn languages while they're sleeping.
You're not just a healer and a seer. You're a trained sniper and a survival instructor, which I think is badass. That's not your typical Oracle toolkit. How did these skills become part of your journey?
Because things that I would see in the future, whether they were for me or for organization or government, would give me anxiety.
Oh, Lord.
That's the honest to God truth. Anything that I had fear about or I would see, instead of me having anxiety, I would go and train for it. And I know that I'm capable of doing anything. If I want to be a doctor and a pilot and a sniper, I can. There is no limits to what I can do, not because of me, but I know that I have supernatural help to fill in the gaps. So I wanted to learn as much as I could learn and be all I can be and be optimized. But I also wanted to be prepared as much as I could, not just for me, but also for friends and family and clients. And when I'm advising governments for different things, I also wanted to be a good advisor. So if I have to advise a special ops team on something supernatural and there's going to be gunfire, I needed to be trained in gunfire so that I can counsel them properly. That's a smart career move on that point, right? But I also wanted to know for myself.
You work with world leaders. Are they preparing for something big? Are we, as the everyday people, being left in the dark about what's really coming?
You know what's funny about world leaders and governments is they're always preparing for catastrophic events, right?
Yeah.
However, they never ever would take into account divine intervention. So for instance, if they're building, $1 billion bunker, it's fully stocked and they can come up with every contingency plan, which I love because I'm all about that too. They never leave room for what we call Marshall's Law or divine intervention. You can't hide from death and you can't hide from destiny or purpose or mission. So if there are people in that bunker that weren't supposed to be there, aren't going to make it, there's nothing you can do. There's no contingency plan for that. And sometimes the obstacles or the tribulations that people are preparing for, what they don't account for is that this is a refining process, meaning you don't get to just tuck away. This is about your growth, and you elected to have this growth as a human being in this experience. And if that's part of your mission for this growth, you're not going to get to avoid that. So being in $1 million bunker is not going to protect you from that. There could be a catastrophic earthquake right where that bunker is.
Absolutely.
And then you're going to have to be out in the world just like the rest of us.
When you advise these high profile clients, how do you navigate ethical dilemmas, especially when your foresight might conflict with their intentions or their actions?
I look at things of who they were before this world, why they're here, and what they're going to become and say what people would label as the eternities, right? Or heaven. I see things very differently. So what somebody else might label as evil or a manipulative agenda, I'm trying to see where they're coming from. I'll give you a really bad example. Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer was killing people and consuming them because he loved them and he wanted to be loved. And he believed that nobody would ever truly love him. And that's why he was trying to keep his victims so close to him. So when you look at things like that, it helps me to see how my brothers and sisters got here. How did they get to this decision? And what can I do about it? Most people are like, that stuff, like they don't even want to dabble in that. They just want to label it dark and evil, but that's never going to create a solution. That's never going to create epiphanies or healing. So when I have those opportunities to work with people like that, I carefully and prayerfully seek after what's light in them so that I can amplify the light in the darkness.
That's a big job.
It is a big job. But, when world leaders, a lot of times they're making big decisions because they feel like the masses can't handle the truth. And that's true. They also believe that where we are as a human race is not sustainable. And that's true. And so some of them believe that they have to make sacrifices. And that's true. So I try to look at some of that, even though the choices that they're making, I don't believe in, and I see other pathways. I'm always trying to look at where they're coming from for this decision. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I am very, very neutral as a healer and as a seer.
You've seen the past and the present and the future. Do you think we're locked into a certain fate, or do you think we can shift our destiny with the right knowledge?
I haven't seen all things. I get to hyper focus on certain things and have been gifted with certain things. So, yes, a short answer is yes. I do not think that we're locked into a fate as a world. But what I do know is that people that are of influence, like I was just talking about, like world leaders, anything or anyone that is an influence over a large mass of people, let's just say millions, let's just say a president of a country, makes a decision that would manipulate free will and choice over a large mass of people, divine intervention happens. I'm going to give everybody an epiphany. Okay, Christians, non-believers, people who just want to be moral. The true definition of sin is the manipulation or removal of free will and choice, or the agency to choose for yourself. The actual definition.
We saw that with COVID.
Right.
It was very sinister. What do you foresee happening, let's say in the next few years? Do you think we're heading towards an awakening, or do you kind of see something much darker?
So I see it from both sides. One of the things that I see over and over again, as far as like a cue, I see things in domino effects. So I'll see like this domino, if this domino happens, then this domino will happen. So there's three things. But one of them always starts with an earthquake in Utah. And this earthquake in Utah is catastrophic. It's like something we've never seen. And it's kind of the beginning cue or the beginning domino. And so I always tell people, if they're wanting to know what's going to happen, I say, look, when this happens, this is when you know this is your cue. And when this happens, this is when you really need to dial in and get your shit together, spiritually and physically, because you don't have a whole lot of time, because there's already a virus on the way. There are foreign troops that are going to be on the American soil. There is a lot of different things that are going to happen. Now, in the scriptures, it talks about these times being the great and dreadful day, but originally the translation was the great or dreadful day. So those of us that have been spiritually preparing or dabbling in these things, learning different skill sets, paying attention prayerfully, learning new spiritual gifts, things like that, we're going to be hyper in tuned because we have something to lean on. And it will be a beautiful thing in amplification. If there's a 10-point earthquake, there will be a 10-point miracle and a 10-point breakthrough, a 10-point spiritual awakening, amplification of those gifts. Catastrophic events are a refining process. So it's really a matter of perspective if it's dark or sinister or beautiful of light, right? That's a matter of your paradigm. For me, I see the beauty in it. I see the collaboration. I see the human race starting to unite again, where we are very divided right now. Families, neighborhoods. I mean, it's crazy. Sometimes it takes catastrophic events for us to get back on track on what really matters.
Like a yin and a yang.
Absolutely.
With science advancing so rapidly, do you think spiritual healing will evolve alongside it, or do you see a divide between traditional medicine and energetic healing growing larger?
Well, are we talking about if nothing happens in the world, or?
Yeah, because I'm trying to go with the yin, not the yang.
All right, I like it. I think that more and more spiritual gifts are awakening and being developed, and supernatural things are happening. And thank God that we do have the social media that we do have, because people are seeing it. They're seeing supernatural things. They're seeing rapid healing, all the way from peptides to an energy worker. Another thing, I really love Trump's team, RFK, and what he's doing with the health department. I'm very grateful for him and the voice that he has, because he's going to put a sounding alarm in some of those alternative therapies. Anytime we can bring more credibility to alternative therapies, it will bring more credibility to the woo-woo supernatural stuff. So I think that we are on a really good pathway. Again, it's the people that we are talking about. Either they're going to believe in vaccinations and mask work, or they don't. It's two different types of personality types. But if it's more readily available and more credibility, that's all you really need.
If there was a universal cheat code you could share with us, something to unlock a higher level of life, what would it be?
I would say the most profound, powerful thing, and this is going to be very simple, is when you can truly understand whatever you believe the definition of God is, or supernatural things, or your spirit guides, whatever it is. But specifically for people who believe in God, especially Christians, because they have a lot of baggage, partners with God versus they are in service of God.
Partners versus service.
Right. And my partners, even if you think about a spouse or a romantic partner, if I have a really good partner, it is equal. And we support each other no matter what, and sickness and health, darkness and light, all of it. Really think about what I'm saying there. In darkness and light, they love me unconditional. They support me. They will do whatever it takes for me to reach my potential. Now, if you amplify that with the definition of something supernatural or of God, and you think that's even better than an even really good partner, that's somebody that has all the connections, who has the financial, warehouse and the supernatural gifts and everything. I mean, that's like the ultimate partner. But the unity is the same. What you could accomplish with a partner like that.
After everything you've learned, after all the people you've helped, what is one truth about life that you wish everyone knew?
That you're never alone.
Amen.
You're never alone in your darkest moments and your brightest moments. You're never alone in your most loneliest moments. There are always supernatural things, always just right there, waiting for the invitation.
We are big believers in that, aren't we, Rach?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there are people that are in the darkest moments, where they commit suicide and things like that. And we've all been there. Some people don't admit it, but man, we've all been there. Some more than others, of course, where we just feel the depths of the void. And I think the void is something that the world never speaks of, that we all have. So if they understood the support system that we truly had, and that you really do have to ask and be specific, here's the other big lesson that I wish that the world knew. And this is huge. People who believe in supernatural things or God or Christ believe and this is a huge lie, that they know everything about you and everything that you need and want. Because God is all-knowing and all-seeing, they believe that God is spying on them and knows everything in their life. And that's not true. If God was spying on you and was a floating wizard in the sky, watching you in every little intimate moment, tapping into your brain, your heart, your thoughts, that would be a manipulative God of free will and choice. And remember what I told you, the true definition of sin is the removal of free will and choice. And God is all about that. He cannot break his universal law, which is celestial law. God is all-knowing and all-seeing because he's been there and done that. He's a practitioner, not because he's spying on you, not because he's watching you. So if you start to approach your partner or God in the sense that he doesn't know the details like you think he does, you will find a lot more power and a lot more specifics about what you're going to say and what you're going to ask for.
I love that. It's such a logical way to look at it too, but many of us take the logic out of things. We just base it on faith. But when you look at it in that perspective, it just changes everything.
It does. And it's huge. And if there's any resonance in that, and anybody who's listening, you need to ask for confirmation of this, because this is one of the biggest, most powerful keys in your spiritual requests. And I want you to think about it as a friend or a parent. I love my daughter. I know a lot about her. We have an amazing relationship, but I'm not tapping into her brain. I'm not watching her masturbate. I'm not putting video cameras in her house. I'm not listening to every conversation she has. If I did, what kind of parent would I be? What kind of mentor would I be? She looks to me for teaching and mentoring because I'm knowledgeable, because I've been there and I've done that. That's the difference. But if she calls me and asks me for help, I'm not like, oh, I've already been tapping into you. I know exactly what you need.
Right.
No, I'm like, tell me what happened. How can I help? And I want the details.
Yeah, that makes sense. I love how you just speak your truth and you're a no bullshit kind of person. I really appreciate that. And I really wish that there were more people like you.
And you're powerful. You just have such a powerful energy to you.
Well, thank you. I could use a compliment today. I really appreciate that.
Well, we appreciate that you pushed through being sick to actually have this interview. And like I said, I feel like it was divinely guided. Where can our listeners find you? And do you have any upcoming projects or teaching or insights they should be looking out for?
Yes, you can always Google Amazing Robyn with a Y, not an I. My website is robynthehealer.com. I also have, remember how I talked about I'm coming back into the public. And I've been in the private sector for years. I am going to be teaching for the very first time spiritual protocols to the masses. It's kind of the upgrade. And it's something I've been pondering and refining for the last 4 years. It's something very special to me. It'll be very sacred, very powerful. It's May 19th through the 22nd here in Colorado. And anybody who just really is looking for that breakthrough, who wants to know truth, who wants to have a deep, deep connection, revelation, dreams, prophecy, spiritual gifts, I would invite anybody to come. From the most basics, I don't feel like I could even have intuition, to somebody who's already spiritually gifted. Everybody is going to walk away a different person. This is a life-changing thing. It's not something I say lightly, but it's very powerful. And that's what I would encourage anybody to come to.
I'm going to link your information right in the details of this episode. Robyn, this conversation has been mind-expanding, to say the least. You are a force unlike any other, and we are so grateful for the wisdom you shared with us today. To our listeners, if this episode hasn't made you question reality just a little bit, I don't know what will. Make sure you subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And as always, stay curious, stay open, and stay in tune with the unseen. Until next time, keep your eyes open, because the universe is always speaking.
To the Spirit
Podcast.
Supernatural Science. I'm ghost.
Psychic.
Mystic.
Spirit.
Divine source.
Heaven. The dead. It's magic.